Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Planning for the BIA. I'm Michael Herrera with MHA Consulting. I've been thinking over the time how many BIAs I've actually been involved in, and have actually been involved with the BIA since the time we were doing this on Word templates, Excel sheets, and now, of course, being able to use software. And it's not been in hundreds. I've actually done thousands of BIAs, and I can't even think how many BIAs MHA has done. And as much as everyone has wanted to get rid of the BIA or the business impact analysis, we still need the BIA. It doesn't mean that over time I do believe that the BIA needs to be altered and changed. There is no silver bullet for the BIA. Each organization is different, but you want to follow the basic standards. But I will tell you, even today, the business impact analysis is foundational to business continuity management programs that needs to be implemented. We really, at this point, don't have a choice. So today we're going to talk a little bit about a very important aspect of it, and that's the planning aspects, getting ready for the BIA. And as we find as a trend, most organizations don't spend enough time planning for the BIA, whether it's small, medium, or a large scope engagement. MHA has now been around for 20 years. April 1st marked our 20th year in operation. Prior to that, I was with Bank of America, where I was a regional vice president. And of course, we were thankfully very well ahead of the game at Bank of America. And we're really at the forefront of a lot of the business impact analysis. At that point, it was more spreadsheets and Word templates, but cut my teeth there doing business impact analysis. And then over those 20 years with MHA have evolved that from spreadsheets and templates now to our BIA on-demand SaaS tools. And the other things we've seen is again, just as our client list, as you can see here, is people are really asking, how long is it going to take your BIA? How long are you going to take with each individual business unit? And we've been able over time to design a process. And that's one of the things we talk about the BIA. You have to consider how long it's going to take. And we got our BIA process down to about a 3-hour total time frame, from half an hour of pre-work to 2 hour, hour and a half to 2 hours in the interview to a half hour for them to validate their results. And we're seeing this across all the organizations you see at this page. They're very adamant about you taking the least amount of time, but still getting excellent information. And the other thing I'll tell you before we actually get to the planning aspects is nothing much has changed, that doing your BIAs in person is the most valuable to you. Highly recommend that. Do not attempt just to send information and sheets out. You need to do the one-on-one interviews. That will get you the most information, as well as allow you to build relationships with those folks that are in your organization. So let's talk a little bit about the planning phases of the business impact analysis. So here's some of the BIA phases in totality. Is first of all, we're going to talk about the planning steps, which are super critical. All those things we need to do to make sure that the entire process is designed properly before we go off and do our BIA. Because if you don't spend the right amount of time in the planning aspects, it will affect you down the road. It will affect you in the gathering of the information, analyzing it, putting all your findings together, and most importantly, having to meet with management and tell them what you found. Because I will be honest and up front, there's been times where maybe we haven't done as good a job planning. When I've seen this happen, where in the end we suffer when we meet with senior management, because that's going to be the key point as to when you bring your findings and they're asking, why is this critical? Why isn't this critical, etc. So very important that, especially at the planning side, we all know how important it is that you do it right as you move forward through the entire BIA phases. So very important here, some of the BIA planning steps. Again, understanding first and foremost is getting a management sponsorship, making sure that, again, they understand what a BIA is and isn't, and we'll cover that in a second. But it's so important that you get their buy-in, and more than just saying go off and do it, but getting a good understanding of what it means. Having a clear understanding of objectives, which we'll cover here as well. What are those key objectives we're trying to achieve? It's very important that management understand what the BIA is so that they can help you formulate the appropriate objectives so that at the end you can say you've met all of those key objectives. Scope, understand what is it? How big or how small do you want this BIA to be? Many times we see organizations attempting in their planning phases to do too big of a BIA, especially if they haven't done one in the past, don't know how, have never done one. It's very important. Keep the scope limited. We'll talk about that as well. Organizing the project. Who do I need on my team? for my team, not just on the planning, but the objectives, but actually helping me conduct the interviews. Who do I need in order to make sure that as we conduct our interviews, we get the right information to what level of detail we need and do the right analysis so the results come out as we see fit. What's all the training we need to do? Let's be very honest. We need to make sure that our participants know what's being asked of them, how much time is being asked of them. Are we going to ask them to log into a system? Are we going to ask them to complete pre-work? And let's as well be honest, most of the time they're not going to read what you send them. So we've got to make sure how are we going to do that training. And in many cases now we're going from just sending pre-work out to actually conducting the pre-work meetings as well in person or over the phone. And then lastly, getting off to that project kickoff. So all of these key steps are critical to a well thought out and executed business impact analysis, from all the way from getting, first of all, management sponsorship, all the way through to getting that initial project kickoff or that first BIA started. All right, how do I get management commitment and sponsorship? Again, make sure management knows what a BIA is and what it isn't. Let them know where the BIA fits on the business continuity management life cycle. They need to know where it fits and that it's just a foundational component, but feeds everything else within the business continuity management cycle. Too many times, management doesn't understand, first of all, what its purpose is and what it's supposed to do and what information it's supposed to get out of it and do with it. I've had cases where people will think, okay, the BIA is done. Well, I guess we're done now. What's left? So very important that you train them. You provide an educational session as to what it is, and also what it means to your organization and how it's going to help the program. Number two, make sure they understand what the budget is for your business continuity. Whether you're doing it yourself and or bringing out a third party to help you, have them understand here's what the cost of the BIA is going to be. Because again, remember, you're taking up people's time. So you need to be very clear as to here's the budget in order for us to conduct this, whether it's internal, external, do we have to buy software, as well as here's what you can expect, how much time I'm going to take of our organization. And as I stated earlier, the trend is today, less and less time is being allocated to the business impact analysis. Organizations want you to trim that down to a very efficient amount of time. I remember when we first were starting to do BIAs many, many years ago, it was a 4 to 6 hour commitment. Now they want to get it down to the point, like I told you, 2.5 to 3 hours total from pre-work to interview to final review. You really got to figure out how to streamline it and get it to the point that you get the right information with the least amount of time from your individual business units that are participating in your study. Third, make sure that management has a clear understanding of the risks and costs of not doing this and what it means. We do have a lot of organizations that they don't want to do a BIA, so they feel that they can just do it one-off and just get a group of people in a room to determine what's critical or not. That works, but a lot of times it doesn't work as well. So let them know what are the risks of not doing this in a formalized way so that you have calculations and you have statistics behind it to support what you're attempting to do and what you're attempting to come out with. And then again, like I said earlier, if they don't understand this, they're not going to support the study, or they're going to make it much more difficult when you get done. So let them know the who, what, when, where, and why of the business impact analysis, what this means along this continuum so that they will support your study and they understand when you show up with the final results, what it means. Okay, so what are the key objectives of the BIA? And objectives is, again, something worked towards or striven for, a goal. So very important, what are the objectives or goals of the BIA? What actually you're trying to do? So if you've never done this before, it's really a good step to really figure out, what am I trying to do? What are we trying to accomplish by performing the BIA? We're trying to understand the criticality of our business processes, understand the recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives, identify our key dependencies for each process, not only internal, external, but our systems. So sit down and think about, what are the key objectives I'm trying to get out of this BIA? You don't have to list 10, keep it to the 5 to 7 most critical objectives. And then when you do that, make sure this aligns with what management is expecting. A lot of times as planners, we use the technical aspects of the BIA. Here's what we want, but make sure management aligns with that and their expectations as to what you're trying to achieve. So there's good alignment and there's no got yous when you're done, so that your objective aligns with theirs as to what they're expecting. But again, that's why that training and education is so important up front, that you truly have them understand what the BIA and what it isn't, so that they can now understand what it's going to do for them and what it's going to mean. And then lastly, as always, I try to make sure that management agrees with and says, yes, I now understand what you're trying to do, and I agree on these objectives, and I'm going to hold you to them when you're done with that BIA. So spend some time on these objectives. Understand what you're trying to achieve, those key objectives and goals, and keep it to a minimal number, 5 to 7. So that's really important. So here's just some sample objectives that I usually place in our objectives for the BIA in the planning document. We're here to identify the processes that are critical to the organization's survival and mission. We're here to determine the impacts, dollar and non-dollar disruption to critical processes. We're here to define the criticality of our processes as well as the systems associated with that. So that's really important. Identify all of our critical dependencies, and then our maximum data loss, or RPO. So those are the core objectives that I always typically will list, which is very important. So out of this, we're going to understand what's critical to our business, and it should align with our mission. Understand the impacts, our dollar and non-dollar, if we couldn't perform the process over time. Define the RTO of our processes and how critical they are to the organization when they need to be recovered. All of the associated critical dependencies, and then the recovery point objectives for our key systems. My philosophy is I try to keep the BIA very succinct. Its job is, again, in my opinion, its job is to do these 5 things. It's not here. It's an input to the recovery strategy. It's an input to the recovery plan. But I keep the BIA very succinct, and this is what I want it to do. And the reason I tell you that is many cases we've seen folks that we've gone off to do BIAs, and they'll have 30, 40, 50 questions on their BIA. Remember, what is the focus and the objective of the BIA? And with that, design your BIA to that. You don't want 40, 50, 60 questions. I will guarantee you, you will not get through the BIAs. People won't be happy to complete them, and you'll never get it done. So keep your objective succinct and to the point as to what you're attempting to achieve out of that. Okay? All right. Now, some of the assumptions, some of the key things that I like to provide as some sample assumptions, because this will be very key. You may have to adjust the assumptions based on your organizations. First and foremost, one of the key assumptions you need to have is business areas are going to provide you with the right subject matter experts for the interviews. This is going to be absolutely critical to you. Recently in interviews, even with our communications, with our training, we show up for a BIA interview with the business unit, and there's 8 to 10 people in the room. All we want are those key people that understand the processes and are in the trenches each and every day. In a lot of cases, that might be 1, maybe it's 2 or 3, but I'll guarantee it's not 8 or 10. So make sure that you understand as you do your training and your education as to the BIA, that one of the key assumptions is we're going to get the right subject matter experts that can talk to the individual processes they perform. Number 2, make sure that your subject matter experts can participate in all areas of the study. That's very important. Can those subject matter experts complete the pre-work? Can they participate in the actual interview? And then can they validate when we're all done? Because again, as you try to do 10, 15, 20, 30, 50, 100 BIAs, you are going to run into problems where people aren't going to show up. The subject matter experts aren't going to provide their input, and it's going to impact your business impact analysis, study, and results. So very important, you clearly identify who are the key subject matter experts that can answer your question by business unit that's participating, and make sure they're going to be available to participate. You're not going to get them from the pre-work, but they don't show up for the interview. You need them across the entire study. Now, third, one of the key sample assumptions as you design your BIA, one of the key things that you're going to need to talk, as at least we do, is we work with management to help us weight the importance of our impact categories as we design our BIA, because we want them to weight them according to what's important to the mission of the company, so that in the end, as we do our analysis and calculations, management's already helped us and weight is loss of revenue more important than impact to brand image and reputation or legal regulatory requirements. So they help us, they participate and evaluate and set up what's the weighting of these categories. When we go off and do our study, guess what? Those weightings are aligned with the mission of the organization. I'll give you an example. Hospitals are definitely more concerned with impact to patient safety and care, degraded brand image and reputation than they are loss of revenue. Financial institutions, it's just they're again have a higher expectation or weighting on loss of revenue, as well as degraded brand image and reputation, customer service. So all industries are different as to how your impact categories are weighted. Again, there's no stated perfect weightings. Also, they need to help us determine what type of impact ranges are we going to use. So we always make sure one of the assumptions is finance or some other similar function in the company is going to help us set those particular dollar ranges so that we have what's aligned again with your mission. Is $1 million a critical impact or $100 million a critical impact? So we need those ranges. And then lastly, most importantly, one of the key assumptions, and nobody does this, and we do this at MHA, we attempt to do this in all of our BIA engagements, is once we're done with the BIA, one of the other assumptions is management's going to sign off on all results. Why is that important? Here's why. What we see happen is we go off, we work hard, we get the BIA done, we do the report, everybody agrees with it, but there's no formal sign-off. Then IT says, well, what did management sign off? No. Or other pieces of the organization say, well, do I need to go off and do this? Management didn't sign off. It's really important you get whether it's electronic or actual signature that says this BIA is valid, so that now as you propagate the results of the BIA through the rest of the organization, from IT to business units, they now have the sign-off that says we agree. Because remember, this affects recovery strategies, recovery solutions, and with that goes time, resources, and money. So really important you have that done. Okay, so if I was going to do my first BIA, should I say, hey, I'm just going to do the whole organization, or should I start with a small sampling? What is the scope of the BIA? So you really, in your planning, need to sit down and think about this. How much of my organization am I going to include? How little? And again, if you have not done a BIA in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, or never, I would highly recommend start small. Look at your organization, and just based on best educated guess and knowledge, hey, let's figure out the top 5 to 10 groups we want to do a BIA for. Those that we already know are critical to our organization without having to do a study. So keep it small, because this gives you a chance to work through your training of your management, your scope, your objectives, and you keep it to a small set, and allows you then to we all make mistakes, but make mistakes on a smaller scale. And then instead of trying to roll this out across 100 units, which you can cause a lot of chaos. And I will tell you about the BIA. The BIA is typically the first step of any business continuity program. You want to irritate people in your organization? Just go off and waste their time doing a business impact analysis and see what happens to the reputation of your business continuity office. So highly recommend you do this right. If you haven't done one before, keep the scope small. Make sure it's manageable. That if you make a mistake, it's easy to rectify before you've rolled it out to 100 groups and they're all saying this doesn't work or it doesn't look right. So start small. And then, because remember, in the end, a really comprehensive BIA, it requires a significant commitment of resources, time, and money. So you really need to be well prepared. Typically we've done the most BIAs MHA has done at once has been a couple hundred that we needed to complete in 2 to 3 months. And that analysis, it takes a lot of analysis. So you need to sit and when you figure out the scope, how many interviews is this going to be? Because a lot of times people will say, hey, Michael, come in, we only have 5 interviews. Then you go take a look at the departments. But guess what? There's so many areas within each of those divisions that, guess what? One division may turn into 5 or 6 interviews on its own. So you need to get a very clear understanding. How big do I need it to be based on what we're trying to achieve? What's my level of maturity in conducting a BIA? What tools do I have? So again, if you haven't done it for a while, keep it small. Okay, timeline. How long is it going to take? So first and foremost, take a look at, you've got to start to figure out how long is it going to take me, first of all, to do each BIA interview. So let's talk a little bit about how many BIA interviews. If I'm doing in-person interviews, how many interviews should I do a day? With our MHA timeline, typically, our BIAs take an hour and a half to 2. So we typically, though, will not do more than 3 BIAs in a day. So if we had 12 BIAs, we'd come in on a Monday and we'd be done by Thursday. But we try not to, it's pretty difficult to do more than 3 BIAs a day, not only from a mental perspective, but I'm going to tell you it's an exhausting process. So we try to do no more than 2 to 3 interviews a day, but we do add fluff for our deadlines, because I guarantee what's going to happen. You're going to have people that don't show up. You're not going to finish. They weren't well prepared. They didn't do their pre-work. So we always try to add some fluff in there to make sure that management understands, and we're not held to this, because I guarantee you will run into scheduling issues where people aren't prepared and your 2-hour interview turns into, hey, I've got to now set up a follow-up interview because we didn't finish. So very important, set realistic deadlines. We've got our process now down pretty well set, but we still run into that, making sure we add fluff in so that we still stay on schedule. Okay, number 2 on your timeline. And very important that management supports you, that they approve the schedule and the time commitments. And you do need them to send something out that says you will show up, you will be prepared. And even then with that, good luck. Like I said, we do this all the time, and maybe there's 80% that complete the pre-work. But there's going to be that 20% that, you know what, it doesn't matter how many times you call them, they don't complete the pre-work. Good luck. You just have to be prepared to deal with that, and it's going to impact your deadline and your timelines. So be prepared for that. But by management sending out a communication, you will participate. Here's what's expected of you from a time perspective. See the attached schedule when you need to show up. Be prepared for that. Also on the timeline, just before, I don't want to forget this, make sure you have the right logistics set up. If there's anything that impacts a BIA as well, you need the right room. You need a room that's big enough for you, you're the team members that we'll talk about in a second. If you need a screen to display your system or anything else, make sure you have good logistics for organizing your BIA. Make sure that those are set up properly. I'd highly recommend, if you can, have maybe only use 1 to 2 conference room throughout your BIA study, just to make it easy for everyone to go to one place. That is important. Last thing I will tell you, don't always give people the out of just being able to dial into a web line. We've had instances where people have been in the same building or across the street, and they refuse to come to the BIA because we gave them a web link. Don't do that. It's easier to say, if you have to do a remote, it's understandable, but if you don't give people the option of a link. Make them come to your BIA interview. You will get more out of it. And then lastly, like I already said, just allow time for interview delays and rescheduling. That makes it hard as a consulting firm. We deal with that. And a lot of times we end up having to still charge a client because we have people on the road trying to do BIAs. So make sure, again, you keep your BIA schedule tight, that you do allow for some delays, but make sure, again, and then also some time for rescheduling, because that will happen. Here's just some thoughts on how long it should take. Again, this is just some 5 BIAs, 10 BIAs, 15 BIAs, and 20. We have a table that we do this. I have a spreadsheet that calculates a lot of different things. Setup is setting up my BIA template, my system. How long would it take? I just put in 16 hours. This may take you a lot less, and we put some project management time in there. But for 5 BIAs, getting everything set up, configuring our tool, our spreadsheet, our templates. Pre-work, 5 BIAs time a half hour times each. That's how long the business units should take. They should each take a half hour. So in 5 BIAs, that's 2.5 hours total. The interviews, 2 hours for each interview. So the 2 hours for each interview ends up being 10. For them to clean up should take them a half hour. So that's 5 to 2.5. Validation. That's for them to complete it. You validating with your group, making sure everything looks good, and then a report around 24 hours or less. So you can see the estimated hours to complete your BIAs over time. Once you get your process down, some of these hours may go down. You may be able to complete pre-work quicker or validation. So you can again reduce the amount of hours. But this should give you a good idea as to how long it should or shouldn't take over time. Also, your report, once you get a report written, it's more just adding additional information to it. So it's just initially that first time you write the report, what do you want to see? And as part of one of the things too, in your objectives, or you're setting up your scope or talking with management, very important that you give them a good understanding of what the management report's going to look like. And what I always try to do is now align our reports with the different organizations. We have a base BIA report, but just remember, some organizations want to see less. Some of our clients don't even want a BIA report anymore. They just want a deck. Okay, who needs to be on my BIA team? So very important. Number 1, who's going to answer the questions about the questionnaire? So who do we need? These are questions to think about. Number 2, who's going to answer questions about the process? Whose help do I need to get the study completed by the approved deadline? But most importantly, who needs to also be at each interview? So these are the types of questions we ask. Who needs to be on the BIA team? Who's going to answer questions about the questionnaire? Who's going to answer questions about the process, the individual processes? Whose help do we need to get the study done on time? And who needs to be at each interview? So what does that look like? So here's who should be on the BIA team. You, as the BIA coordinator, that poor soul that has to be out there coordinating, getting everybody to interviews, conducting the interviews. One of the things I want to say, folks, as the BIA coordinator, if you're the one in charge, if you can't facilitate interviews and that's not your stick, go find somebody who can be, okay? Very, very important. Make sure you have the right person or persons that are good at coordinating these interviews, sticking to the timeline, and getting done in that time frame. They've got to be good at it, or your BIAs will fail miserably. Also, the BIA sponsor, they don't have to, of course, show up for the interviews, but BIA sponsor, you need your management sponsor. Finance, you're going to need them to help you develop any of your impact ranges and dollar impacts. You need the management team. Hopefully you have a steering committee. Help you weight, at least for us, we always have to have them weight the importance of our impact category so we can conduct our study and the weighting and calculations are done properly. You do need your IT. You're going to need them to provide you with a list of all the systems and applications that each of the process uses so that you can reference them properly in the interviews. And then, of course, all of these team members help you validate the results. You need to be able to take the results back and say, hey, guys, is this right? Does this look okay? And be prepared for the management told you so. But that's who you need on your BIA team. Now, who should go to my interview? The BIA interview facilitator, that person or persons who are in charge of interviewing each of the business units. The interview scribe, if you need one. At MHA, we've got it to the point it's only our interview facilitator that does not only the conducting of the interview, but the scribing. If you haven't done one before, I'd highly recommend you have a facilitator and somebody to help you take notes. Once you get really good at it, then you probably won't need a couple of you, but initially you might. You need somebody from IT. And it's really worked well for us in the past. We have somebody from IT in these sessions. They help the business unit remember or identify additional systems, get the right names of the systems. It really helps you get a good comprehensive inventory of systems. And then, of course, the actual business unit themselves, those subject matter experts that can talk to their individual processes, understand the impacts, their dependencies, the systems they need. You need those key people at each business unit. Keep the number small. Like I said, we've seen interviews before where we've walked in the room, we got 8, 10, 12 people. That's a lot of wasted time and effort when you only need probably 3 to 4 at the most. So really important. Last thing I'll tell you, what happens sometimes at interviews, we've had people come in and said, I don't know why I'm here. It's a waste of time, and I'll already tell you we're critical and leave the room. So we've seen it all. And you have others that won't send you pre-work. They'll come to the interview, provide you as little information as they can because they don't want to be there. So you must be prepared as interview facilitator to deal with all of those cultural issues. That's why management support and sponsorship is so important. You explain it thoroughly and make it as seamless as possible. My goal and our team's goal always has been when they're out of that BIA is, hey, this wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. That's the comment you want when they leave. Okay. As I told you about the training requirements, it's really critical that you have good instructions from the beginning to the end. Do not, don't take this lightly. Make sure if you're any training, make sure you have good instructions. Communicate it, over-communicate. If you're going to make them use a software product, you better be prepared for that. We try to minimize the use of any software that we just have to give to the business units. That's why we try to make our pre-work so easy with the link and try to keep it self-explanatory. If you do need also any electronic forms to train, produce those. And most importantly, schedule enough sessions. If you got to do any pre-training, schedule enough sessions so people show up. So you leave little room for doubt when they show up at your BIA interviews. Okay? So good instructions. If you're going to use any software, make sure you train those people. Again, what we see more and more of, I'm going to be honest with you, business organizations we work with, they don't want to have to now train their people using additional software. They basically want you to come in, have them do a little bit of pre-work, conduct the interview one-on-one or remote, and get them out and train them, again, as little as possible. But if you have to, schedule enough sessions. All right. Very important. What's the kickoff? Make sure that everybody knows management's committed. They should have already communicated out. That should have come out from a very senior person in the organization. We try to send out a communication that's management signed, a management sponsor's already signed, and it's sent out there 3 to 4 weeks before the start of the study or the interviews. That way everybody knows it's coming. Here's why it's important. Here's what's expected, your role, your commitment of time. And then once that's sent out in a couple of weeks before the start of the study, we send out our pre-work via email, comes in a link, they're able to complete it, for asking some real basic information. So you can see now after you've done the scope, the assumptions, the objectives, management, sponsorship, you're now getting to that point of how do I get this kicked off and going. So make sure, again, everybody knows management's committed. You have to do it. Number 2, send out that initial communication of what's expected. And then 3, send out that pre-work, now asking them to, hey, get ready for the study before you show up for your interview. Identifying the audience. This is a question that always gets asked. What level should I do my BIA at? I'm already going to tell you, if you're going to do, if you haven't done a BIA for a while, start at least at the mid-level. Some clients will want to do executive, senior management, but you have the high, mid, and low levels of an organization to do the BIA at. So remember that. You got to identify what level am I going to do my BIA at. Senior level management, you can do this at the highest level of the different groups. Out of that, what happens? Well, by doing that, it's great because you can get through your BIA really quickly. You're going to get a higher level set of processes. You're not going to have as fine a detail, not as many people to train or interview, and it's easier to summarize data and less time to complete because you're at a much higher level. So they may only tell you in a group that has maybe in a division that maybe has 4 or 5 departments under it, they still may only give you 5 processes they think are critical. So that's the bad part of the high level audience. You're not going to get as high a good a detail. It's not going to be as fine as you want, and it's going to have a limited viewpoint. But the positives is if you want to do the high level, you can get done pretty dang quickly and doing a high level BIA, doing it at that highest level of the organization. So just be prepared. There's a lot of good associated with it. Your data just won't be as fine, and you're going to have a limited viewpoint. Mid-level is, like I said, most organizations want to do that. They'll do this at the mid-level of the organization, which is a great level to get this done at because, again, it provides an expanded viewpoint. Detail's not as fine, but I like this level. It gives me a very good level set when I first start. There's going to be more questionnaires and pre-work and training. It's going to take you a while to consolidate your data because you're adding to the number of groups, and you're going to have a larger population. But I do like this level of detail. For most organizations, this is sufficient, especially those organizations that haven't done a BIA in the past, haven't done one in a recent past. It gives you a good level set as to where you are at. And that's something that typically most of the organizations we work with, we move down to the middle level audience. Now, you can do to the lowest level of and most organizations aren't doing this. They're now going way down to the lowest level of the organization. And this is, again, typically we see this though with organizations that have already done multiple BIAs and are really trying to get to a really low level of detail. I wouldn't highly recommend this as your first BIA. I'd recommend that mid or high level BIA, first of all. Because on the low level audience, you're going to get in a greatly expanded viewpoint. Your data is going to be very detailed, but you're going to have a lot of questionnaires to distribute. You're going to have a much larger population to train, and it's much slower. So mid-level to high is good on first BIA, and as you get higher level of sophistication in your program, you can get further down in the organizations. You can understand more and more processes over time. So that's going to be important. Organizations we have worked with for years, that we have seen how good some of them have gotten. We have one utility we've worked with, and probably now we're working with them over 10 years, and we've seen the refinement of their BIA, as we've seen that they really have gotten it down to understand what's core to their company, what isn't. And as we do each BIA, processes get deleted. They're no longer there. They get refined in how they name them. So it's a really good to see is once you do 1, 2, 3 BIAs, how good this becomes, how good your BIA becomes, and you really become clear as to what you need and what you don't need in a disruption. All right. So as I already said on determining the audience, is this your first BIA? So keep it to high to mid-level. Make sure that who you're conducting the BIA at also meets your objectives and scope. How soon do I need to have it completed? If I need to be completed really, really quick, I may only have to go at the high level, or high or mid. If you need it completed really quickly, you're probably not going to go down to the lowest level of the organization. It's going to take you too long. So that's really important. And lastly, what are senior management's expectations? If they want level of detail, you better go down to at least the mid-level. And if they want a lot of detail, just go to the lowest, just let them know it's going to take longer. So that's why that audience level is so key to planning the BIA as to what level I need to do this at. All right, last slide here. Very important. How do I, you need to speak with management. How do I identify the business units to be included? Always talk to your senior management, whether that's your business continuity team, business continuity steering committee, and or senior sponsor. A lot of organizations don't have org charts. So talk to senior management. Look at your org charts. look at the mission of your organization. Which units are key to your mission? Helps you identify who should we include in this initial BIA and who do we not need to. You don't need to do them all at once. I always tell folks, and it's amazing when you work with organizations and you show them how you can initially cut this down to a small number, still give you a decent picture, and then next phase, maybe you do another BIA the next year and you include additional business units. So again, unless you have unlimited time, resources, and money, have a scope for your BIA. Phase 1 is 10 groups. Phase 2 is another 10. Phase 3 is everyone else. So you can quickly do this by talk to senior management, see what's the mission of your company, and identify who are those groups that are key to that. Current trends. Initial scope is typically smaller. Organizations seem to like that because, again, we can also then parse out the time or commitment over time. We can say we're doing 10 BIAs this year or 20. Next year, maybe we'll do another X number. We see a lot of integration, especially with our tools with IT and their configuration databases. They really want clear pictures of the systems and system dependencies and RPOs integrated with their configuration database. It's a lot more integration going on. We're including a lot of single point of failure risk assessments, especially on the banking side, where we're having to go in as we look at each process, what are single points of failure within that process and the people, technology associated with it. One-on-one, guys, you would think today with all the technology that you could just send out the BIA and it give you great data. That's not the case. I hate to tell you, one-on-one interviews, whether they're remote or my of course preference in person, still yields the best data, especially when you have a good facilitator. I cannot emphasize that enough. I'm not trying to sell MHA or any other consulting firms, but if you've not done one, make sure if you need to, bring someone in to show you how to set it up, how to conduct interviews, and you take over time. So it makes your process much more simple. You learn, and you learn to do it the right way. We've been called in before where people have been planning their BIA for a year, 12 months trying to plan a BIA, something that should have been done in 45 to 60 days or less. Trends too. Management wants the BIA done very quickly. They are pressing us to get this in, get there, figure it out, set it up, conduct it, and get out. Most want it done in 60 days. We've seen organizations, though, try to do hundreds of BIAs. So I always ask the question to the business continuity people, are you in the BIA business or are you the business continuity business? You do need to do a BIA, but you don't want your whole life to be BIAs. So figure out what you need to do, what's most effective and efficient for the organization to get you the data you need. And again, as we see more and more, especially management, do all the training you need in awareness up front. Don't give yourself time to do that. You want people to understand why they're doing this so that they see this as a value to their organization. Okay. One of the last ones here. Industry best practice components are critical to appropriately measuring impacts. Make sure that that's your impact categories, dollar, non-dollar, such as loss of revenue, customer service. They should be consistent with your organizational structure. Also, your weighting should be consistent with the organizational mission. We talked about that. What is my weighting for loss of revenue versus my weighting for customer service or legal regulatory? Those weightings of importance should be all aligned with the mission. RTOs and RPOs should be in line with what the business does. This is so important. If I'm a hospital, my recovery time objectives for my processes and my systems are going to be very short. Same thing with the bank. Same thing with a casino. Other organizations such as construction, their RTOs and RPOs could be longer because guess what? They don't have as time-sensitive need for some of their processes and systems as other organizations. So don't design recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives that don't align with who you are and the type of customers you support. And make sure, again, as you build all this in, that your BIA team is in agreement with the data, the scales, and the weighting. So that in the end, when you're done, nobody comes back and asks you, how did we do this and why? Because I will tell you that's going to happen. And you will get some business processes that maybe don't come out where you want them based on your analysis. And that's why you need to have your validation group. And then, as I always tell people, you have management told you so. You're going to have that. They're going to say move the process or the systems one way or the other, not as critical, or have a higher level of criticality. Be prepared for that. That's all I have. I'm going to bring it up here if I can here and have everybody questions. If I can get my tool here to we go. Do we have questions out there on the BIA and its planning? There's got to be one question on how to plan for a BIA. Couldn't have been that clear today. All right, folks. Well, I want to thank everybody for their time. If we don't have any questions, my contact information is on this last slide. Feel free at any time to send me any questions. More than happy to answer.
Michael?
Yes.
You do have a question in your chat window.
I'm sorry. I didn't see it in chat.
Just popped up. It just popped up.
Okay. So do you include? The question is, do you include resources in the BIA that are basic to core IT infrastructure like single sign-on? So that's a great question. When we're looking at dependencies, we work ahead with IT and we ask them, what things do we want to assume and what items do we want to, ask to include? So a lot of times IT will say, look, when you ask business units, don't include internet, don't include, these email, because we already know that's part of core infrastructure. Now, a lot of times, though, for when you go to interview, if you interview IT and you look at their processes, you may need to identify things like single sign-on, et cetera, because they may use a specific system. But typically, in a lot of cases, when you're interviewing business units, we've already defined, here's the core infrastructure. We're not going to ask. It's an assumed need, and we don't ask and then waste the time of asking internet, a lot of all those key pieces. David, I hope that answered your question. Okay. Other questions? I think, again, the only last thing I'd say is please spend time on planning. Make sure you understand it all from what management expectations, what you expect them to do for you. Make sure you have a solid process to conduct your BIA with, whether that's even an Excel sheet, a Word template, or if you're using a system. Spend the time setting it up properly and keep it simple. Keep it simple. That's very, very important. Do not make it complex. I guarantee you will be spending months. Oh, and then there's a lot of software tools out there to do a BIA, a tremendous number. And, so you've got all the tools. MHA has its own BIA tool. When you look at these BIA tools, there's many out there. Simpler is better. When you look at the software tools, you have a clear understanding. How do they calculate what's critical to you, to your organization? Understand the calculations behind it. Is the tool easy to use, not only at the business continuity level, but if you have to roll it out to your business units, how easy is it to use? So there's a proliferation of tools out there, software to do BIAs. Just be careful with them. Make sure that they're easy to use, and they also fit your level of sophistication. A lot of the BIA tools, again, they're phenomenal, but guess what? They allow for so much configuration that by the end, you don't even know what the BIA is doing. Remember what you're trying to do. You're basically trying to get the BIA to tell me what processes are critical, what dependencies, what systems do I need. Keep it simple. Thank you for that question. Anything else before I let everyone go? Well, again, thank you, everyone. And I wish everyone a wonderful day. And thank you for coming to Planning for the BIA.